Welcome back to the Yours and Old FoMoCo Iron YouTube channel. My name is Adrian Clements, and today in video number 30 we're going to dig into the 6 inline-six-cylinder engines that were part of the entire 26 engine lineup available for the 1970 FoMoCo passenger cars. Video number 31 covers the 6 small V8s, video number 32 covers the 6 FE large V8s, and video number 33 covers the 8 385 series large V8s. If you want to see shiny cars and hear misinformation, please look elsewhere. But if you want to see FoMoCo documentation, hear facts, and actually learn, then please keep watching. Buckle your seatbelts, because here we go. Let's begin with a quick look at the 12 FoMoCo passenger car vehicle lines for the 1970 model year, which are as follows. A equals Ford full-size. D equals Ford Falcon, which was only produced until approximately December 1969, at which point it was discontinued. F equals Ford Torino, which includes the 1970 and a half Ford Falcon series, which replaced the 1970 Ford Falcon vehicle line in approximately January 1970. G equals Mercury Montego. L equals Lincoln Continental Mark III. Yes, it's a Lincoln. M equals Mercury full-size. Q equals Ford Maverick, S equals Ford Thunderbird, V equals Lincoln Continental, W equals Mercury Cougar, Y equals Mercury Meteor, which were built and sold only in Canada, and finally Z equals Ford Mustang. These 12 vehicle lines saw a total of just over 2.5 million units built for the 1970 model year. Just incredible. FoMoCo aficionados will notice that these vehicle line code letters are the same as the codes used in the third position of the FoMoCo part numbers for these vehicles. For example, the part number prefix for a part originally engineered for a 1970 Ford full-size car will begin with D0AZ, where the D indicates the 1970 decade, the 0 indicates the 1970 model year, and the A indicates Ford full-size. The part number prefix for a 1970 Mercury Montego part is D0GZ, where G indicates Montego. 1970 Ford Mustang part numbers begin with D0ZZ, where the first Z indicates Mustang, etc. The cover of the first printing from September 1969 of the 1970 Car Shop Manual Volume 2 Engine lists the 12 vehicle lines down the right-hand side and has this table of the vehicle lines versus engines on page 21-01-03. The basic information here is correct, but there are some outright mistakes, such as the information about the 428 and 429 SCJ, or Super Cobra Jet engines, and inconsistencies likely due to running changes that occurred during actual production of the 1970 FoMoCo passenger cars from approximately August 1969 through July 1970, such as which vehicle lines had the H-code 351 Windsor 2-barrel V8 engine and which had the H-star code 351 Cleveland 2-barrel engine. Please note that I will not be addressing the 4 low compression engine versions listed, as they were for export cars only, were produced in very small numbers, and there is almost no information to be found about these engines. While the shop manual table lists 22 different engines, believe it or not, there were actually a total of 26 different engines that were available for installation in the 1970 FoMoCo passenger cars. 26 engines, that is crazy. I corrected the errors from the shop manual and created this table of vehicle lines in the columns and engines in ascending order of displacement and horsepower in the rows to show how the availability of these engines was distributed among the 12 vehicle lines. Please note that the terms U-code, T-code, V-code, etc. refer to the engine code in the 5th position of each car's 11-digit 1970 model year vehicle identification number, or VIN. Looking at the engine choices per vehicle line highlighted here in green, we see that vehicle line A, Ford full-size, had 11 engine choices. Vehicle line D, Ford Falcon, had 2 engine choices. Vehicle line F, Ford Torino, had 10 engine choices. Vehicle line G, Mercury Montego, had 7 engine choices. Vehicle line L, Lincoln Continental Mark III, had only 1 engine. Vehicle line M, Mercury full-size, had 4 engine choices. Vehicle line Q, Ford Maverick, had 3 engine choices. Vehicle line S, Ford Thunderbird, had only 1 engine. Vehicle line V, Lincoln Continental, had only 1 engine. Vehicle line W, Mercury Cougar, had 6 engine choices. Vehicle line Y, Mercury Meteor, had 7 engine choices. And vehicle line Z, Ford Mustang, had 12 engine choices, the most of all the vehicle lines. This is what the table looks like when expanded to include details about each of the 26 engines. There is a lot of information presented in this table, so we'll review it all engine by engine in this video and videos number 31, 32, and 33 in this 4-part video series. These are the 41 notes that accompany the table of 26 engines just shown. Again, there's a lot of information in these notes, so we'll review the pertinent notes as each engine is covered in this video and videos number 31, 32, and 33. These are the 6 six-cylinder engines and 8 applicable notes that we'll be covering in this video. We'll touch on each of the 6-cylinder engines individually, reviewing their vehicle line availabilities and specifications, and seeing images of the engine. Looking at the 6-cylinder engine choices per vehicle line highlighted here in green, we see that vehicle line A, Ford full-size, had 3 6-cylinder engine choices. Vehicle line D, Ford Falcon, had 1 6-cylinder engine choice. Vehicle line F, Ford Torino, had 1 6-cylinder engine choice. Vehicle line G, Mercury Montego, had 1 6-cylinder engine choice. Vehicle line Q, Ford Maverick, had 3 6-cylinder engine choices. And vehicle line Z, Ford Mustang, had 2 6-cylinder engine choices. Please note that there were no 6-cylinder engines offered in 6 of the 12 vehicle lines, namely vehicle line L, Lincoln Continental Mark III, vehicle line M, Mercury full-size, vehicle line S, Ford Thunderbird, vehicle line V, Lincoln Continental, vehicle line W, Mercury Cougar, and vehicle line Y, Mercury Meteor. The first and smallest of the 6 1970 FoMoCo 6-cylinder engines to cover is the U-code 170 cubic inch inline-six engine with a 1-barrel carburetor. Having debuted as an optional engine in the 1961 Ford Falcon lineup, this engine was in its 10th year of production by the time the 1970 model year rolled around. The U-code 170 1-barrel inline-six engine was only available as standard in the 1970 Ford Maverick vehicle line Q. The 1970 Ford Carfax book contains very detailed information for dealership sales personnel about each model in the 1970 Ford full-size, Torino, Falcon, Maverick, Mustang, and Thunderbird vehicle lines. Page H3 of the Power Teams section of the 1970 Ford Carfax book has these 13 quick facts about the 1970 6-cylinder engines. I'll stop talking for 5 seconds now so that you can pause the video and read the verbiage if you like. Here's a close-up of the illustration of the generic inline-six engine in the upper left-hand corner of page H3. The final 2 quick facts appear at the top of page H4 of the same Power Teams section of the Carfax book. Below these quick facts is a box on the left that contains details about the 170 1-barrel inline-six engine. This information with additional details is presented as the first line in this 6-cylinder engines table I created. The U-code 170 1-barrel inline-six engine was produced at the FoMoCo engine plant in Lima, Ohio, and had a bore of 3.50 inches, or 88.9 millimeters, and a stroke of 2.94 inches, or 74.7 millimeters, an over-square design where the bore is larger than the stroke in a 1.19 to 1 ratio. The actual engine displacement calculates to 169.7 cubic inches, or 2.78 liters. And this engine developed 105 horsepower at 4,200 RPM and 156 pound-feet of torque at 2,200 RPM with an 8.7 to 1 compression ratio. The engine had a cast iron crankshaft that rode in 4 main bearings, with all 4 crankshaft main bearing caps having 2 bolts each. Additionally, the engine had hydraulic valve lifters, a Carter YF one-barrel carburetor that flowed 150 cubic feet per minute, or CFM, and burned regular fuel. I don't have any images in my FoMoCo photo archives of a 1970 Ford Maverick with a U-code 170 one-barrel inline-six engine. So these 5 close-up images of a 170 one-barrel inline-six engine destined for a pre-production 1966 Ford Bronco will have to suffice. The second of the 6 1970 FoMoCo 6-cylinder engines to examine is the T-code 200 cubic inch inline-six engine with a one-barrel carburetor. This engine debuted as the standard engine in the 1964 Ford Fairlane lineup when the Ford-O-Matic 2-speed automatic transmission was ordered, and as an optional engine available only with the Ford-O-Matic transmission for some models in the 1964 Ford Falcon lineup. So this engine was in its 7th year of production for the 1970 model year. The T-code 201 barrel inline-six engine was standard in the 1970 Ford Falcon, vehicle line D, was an option in the 1970 Ford Maverick, vehicle line Q, and lastly, per note 2, was standard in the 1970 Ford Mustang, except for the Mach 1, Boss 302, and Boss 429 models, vehicle line Z. Page H4 of the Power Team section of the 1970 Ford Carfax book has a box in the lower left-hand corner that contains details about the 201 barrel inline-six engine. This information, with additional details, is presented as the second line in the 6-cylinder engines table I created. The T-code 201 barrel inline-six engine was produced at the FoMoCo engine plant in Lima, Ohio, and had a bore of 3.68 inches, or 93.5 millimeters, and a stroke of 3.13 inches, or 79.5 millimeters, an over-square design where the bore is larger than the stroke in a 1.18 to 1 ratio. The actual engine displacement calculates to 199.7 cubic inches, or 3.27 liters, and it developed 120 horsepower at 4,000 RPM and 190 pound-feet of torque at 2,200 RPM with an 8.7 to 1 compression ratio. The engine had a cast iron crankshaft that rode in 7 main bearings, 3 more than the U-code 170 one-barrel inline-six engine, with all 7 crankshaft main bearing caps having 2 bolts each. Additionally, the engine had hydraulic valve lifters, a Carter YF one-barrel carburetor that flowed 187 CFM, and burned regular fuel. These photos show the standard T-code 201 barrel inline-six engine installed in a white 1970 Ford Falcon Club Coupe with VIN 0K10T197385. Please note that Club Coupe was period Ford speak for the two-door sedan body style in the Falcon lineup. The third of the 6 1970 FoMoCo 6-cylinder engines to look at is the V-code 240 cubic inch inline-six engine with a one-barrel carburetor. This engine debuted as the standard engine in the 1965 Ford full-size car lineup, except for the Galaxie 500 XL and Galaxie 500 LTD series, so 1970 was its 6th year of production. The V-code 241 barrel inline-six engine per note 3 was only available as standard in the 1970 Ford Custom, Custom 500, and Galaxie 500 series in the Ford full-size lineup, vehicle line A. Page H4 of the Power Team section of the 1970 Ford Carfax book has a box in the upper right-hand corner that contains details about the 241 barrel inline-six engine. This information, with additional facts, is presented as the third line in the 6-cylinder engines table I created. The V-Code 241-barrel inline-six engine was produced at the FoMoCo engine plant in Brook Park near Cleveland, Ohio, and had a bore of 4.00 inches, or 101.6 millimeters, and a stroke of 3.18 inches, or 80.8 millimeters. An over-square design where the bore is larger than the stroke in a 1.26 to 1 ratio. The actual engine displacement calculates to 239.8 cubic inches, or 3.93 liters, and it developed 150 horsepower at 4,000 RPM and 234 pound-feet of torque at 2,200 RPM, with a 9.2 to 1 compression ratio. The engine had a cast iron crankshaft that rode in 7 main bearings, with all 7 crankshaft main bearing caps having 2 bolts each. Additionally, the engine had hydraulic valve lifters, a Carter YF one-barrel carburetor that flowed 180 CFM, and burned regular fuel. I don't have any images in my FoMoCo photo archives of a 1970 Ford full-size car with a V-Code 241-barrel inline-six engine, so here are 3 images of a 241-barrel engine in a night mist blue 1967 Ford Custom two-door sedan with VIN 7W50V139916 instead, as the 2 engines are visually similar. The fourth of the 6 1970 FoMoCo 6-cylinder engines to examine is the B-Code 240 cubic inch inline-six engine with a 1-barrel carburetor that was available to law enforcement agencies only for use in police cars. Like the V-Code 241 barrel, this engine debuted as the standard engine in 1965 Ford full-size cars, though this time for police cars. 1970 was also its 6th year of production. The B-Code 241-barrel inline-six police engine per note 4 was only available as standard in the 1970 Ford Custom 4-door sedan model and Custom 500 4-door sedan model police cars in the Ford full-size lineup, Vehicle Line A. The 1970 Ford Police and Emergency Vehicle Sales Catalog has images on page 2 on the left and information on page 3. The center section of the left-hand column on page 3 provides details about the deputy police package, which was built around the B-Code 241-barrel inline-six engine. That engine is listed as developing 150 horsepower at 4,000 RPM and 234 pound-feet of torque at 2,200 RPM, with a 9.2 to 1 compression ratio, which are the same values as the V-Code 241-barrel engine covered in the previous section. I'll stop talking now for 5 seconds so that you can pause the video and read the text if you would like to. These are pages 4 and 5 of the 1970 Ford Police and Emergency Vehicle Sales Catalog. Again, I'll stop talking for 5 seconds. Here we have pages 6 and 7 of the same sales catalog. Again, I'll stop talking for 5 seconds. Page 11 of the 1970 Ford Police and Emergency Vehicle Sales Catalog also contains details about the deputy police package and shows the same figures of 150 horsepower at 4,000 RPM and 234 pound-feet of torque at 2,200 RPM with a 9.2 to 1 compression ratio. The B-Code 241-barrel inline-six police engine is presented as the 4th line in the 6-cylinder engines table I created. Like the V-Code 241-barrel inline-six engine, the B-Code engine was produced at the FoMoCo engine plant in Brook Park near Cleveland, Ohio, and had a bore of 4.00 inches, or 101.6 millimeters, and a stroke of 3.18 inches, or 80.8 millimeters, an over-square design where the bore is larger than the stroke in a 1.26 to 1 ratio. The actual engine displacement calculates to 239.8 cubic inches, or 3.93 liters, and it developed 150 horsepower at 4,000 RPM and 234 pound-feet of torque at 2,200 RPM with a 9.2 to 1 compression ratio. The engine had a cast iron crankshaft that rode in 7 main bearings, with all 7 crankshaft main bearing caps having 2 bolts each. Additionally, the engine had hydraulic valve lifters, a Carter YF one-barrel carburetor that flowed 187 CFM, and burned regular fuel. I don't have any images in my FoMoCo photo archives of a 1970 Ford full-size car with a B-code 240 one-barrel inline-six police engine, but it would look visually similar to the 3 images of the V-code 240 one-barrel engine in the 1967 Ford Custom two-door sedan shown at the end of the previous section. The 5th of the 6 1970 FoMoCo 6-cylinder engines to see is the E-code 240 cubic inch inline-six engine with a one-barrel carburetor that was available only for use in taxicabs. Like the V-code and B-code 240 one-barrel, this engine debuted for the 1965 model year, but this time as the base engine in 1965 Ford full-size taxicabs. 1970 was also its 6th year of production. The E-code 241 barrel inline-six taxi engine per note 5 was only available as standard in the 1970 Ford Custom 4-door sedan model and Custom 500 4-door sedan model taxicabs in the Ford full-size lineup, Vehicle Line A. Pages 4 and 5 of the 1970 Ford taxicab sales catalog show images of a Custom 4-door sedan taxicab and a Custom 500 4-door sedan taxicab. The same document has information on pages 2 on the left and 3, and images on page 3. The table at the bottom of page 2 provides details about the Taxi Special 6. Like the V-code 241 barrel and the B-code 241 barrel police inline-six engine, the E-code 241 barrel taxi engine is listed as developing 150 horsepower at 4,000 RPM and 234 pound-feet of torque at 2,200 RPM with a 9.2 to 1 compression ratio. The E-code 241 barrel inline-six taxi engine is presented as the 5th line in the 6-cylinder engines table I created. Like the V-code 241 barrel and the B-code 241 barrel police inline-six engines, the E-code 241 barrel taxi engine was produced at the FoMoCo engine plant in Brook Park near Cleveland, Ohio, and had a bore of 4.00 inches or 101.6 millimeters, and a stroke of 3.18 inches or 80.8 millimeters. An over-square design where the bore is larger than the stroke in a 1.26 to 1 ratio. The actual engine displacement calculates to 239.8 cubic inches or 3.93 liters, and it developed 150 horsepower at 4,000 RPM and 234 pound-feet of torque at 2,200 RPM with a 9.2 to 1 compression ratio. The engine had a cast iron crankshaft that rode in 7 main bearings, with all 7 crankshaft main bearing caps having 2 bolts each. Additionally, the engine had hydraulic valve lifters, a Carter YF one-barrel carburetor that flowed 187 CFM, and burned regular fuel. Here again, I don't have any images in my FoMoCo photo archives of a 1970 Ford full-size car with an E-code 241 barrel inline-six taxi engine, but it would look visually the same as the 3 images of the V-code 241 barrel engine in the 1967 Ford Custom two-door sedan presented 2 sections ago. The 6th and final of the 1970 FoMoCo 6-cylinder engines to investigate is the L-code 250 cubic inch inline-six engine with a one-barrel carburetor. This engine debuted for the 1969 model year as the standard engine on some models of the Ford Fairlane and Mercury Montego lineups, and as an optional engine on some models of the Ford Mustang. For 1970, it was in its 2nd year of production. This is the first time that we've seen Note 1 referenced. It stipulates that the 1970 Ford Torino, Vehicle Line F, includes the 1970.5 Ford Falcon series that was introduced in approximately January 1970 to replace the 1970 Ford Falcon vehicle line that had been discontinued in approximately December 1969. The L-code 251-barrel inline-six engine per notes 1 and 6 was standard in the 1970.5 Ford Falcon and 1970 Ford Fairlane 500, Torino, Ranchero, Ranchero 500, and Ranchero Squire series, vehicle line F. Per note 7 was standard in the 1970 Mercury Montego, Montego MX, Montego MX Brougham, and Montego MX Villager series, vehicle line G. Was an option in the 1970 Ford Maverick, vehicle line Q. And lastly, per note 8 was an option in the 1970 Ford Mustang lineup except the Mach 1, Boss 302, and Boss 429 models, vehicle line Z. Page G2 of the Power Teams section of the 1969 Ford Carfax book has these 13 quick facts about the new L-code 251-barrel six-cylinder engine. I'll stop talking now for 5 seconds so that you can pause the video and read the text if you would like. Page H4 of the Power Teams section of the 1970 Ford Carfax book has a box in the bottom right-hand corner that contains details about the 251-barrel inline-six engine. We'll review this data momentarily when going through the table I created. The 1970 Mercury and Lincoln product data book contains very detailed information for dealership sales personnel about each model in the 1970 Mercury Cougar, Montego, Mercury Full-Size, Lincoln Continental, and Lincoln Continental Mark III vehicle lines. Page 101 of the Power Teams engine section of the product data book contains information about the L-code 251-barrel inline-six engine, covering topics such as the cylinder block, cylinder heads, crankshaft, carburetor, etc. I'll stop talking now for 5 seconds so you can read it if you like. Let's take a closer look at these two areas on the page, beginning with this information box labeled Points to Emphasize about the 251-barrel engine. The text reads, economical six-cylinder, crankshaft with 8 counterweights for smoothing power pulses, large main bearing diameter for stability and dependability, rubber cushioned mounting minimizes vibrations and provides smooth running characteristics. Connecting rods have pyramid I-beam design. Piston oil ring rails, chrome plated. Alternator and optional power steering pump is mounted directly to cylinder block for better stability. The information presented in the engine specifications table matches exactly with page H4 of the Power Team sections of the 1970 Ford Carfax book that we saw a few moments ago. Here's a close-up of the illustration of the L-code 251-barrel inline-six engine in the upper left-hand corner of page 101. The L-code 251-barrel inline-six engine is presented as the last line in the six-cylinder engines table I created. This engine was produced at the FoMoCo engine plant in Lima, Ohio, and had a bore of 3.68 inches, or 93.5 millimeters, the same as the T-code 201-barrel engine, and a stroke of 3.91 inches, or 99.3 millimeters. An under-square design where the bore is smaller than the stroke in a 0.94 to 1 ratio. The actual engine displacement calculates to 249.5 cubic inches, or 4.09 liters, and it developed 155 horsepower at 4,000 RPM and 240 pound-feet of torque at 1,600 RPM with a 9.0 to 1 compression ratio. The engine had a cast iron crankshaft that rode in 7 main bearings, with all 7 crankshaft main bearing caps having 2 bolts each. Additionally, the engine had hydraulic valve lifters, a Carter RS one-barrel carburetor that flowed 230 CFM, and burned regular fuel. These photos are of the standard L-code 251-barrel inline-six engine installed in a 1970.5 Ford Falcon two-door sedan. Please note that the air cleaner intake snout and the radiator are missing from this car. Finally, to end this section and this video, the engine photos were provided by Troy Lemming of Troy's 70 to 71 Torino parts. Please reach out to Troy for all of your 1970 to 71 Torino parts needs and let him know that Adrian sent you his way. Thank you very much for watching video number 30. I hope you enjoyed learning about the six-cylinder engines in the 1970 FoMoCo passenger car engine lineup. Please be sure to check out videos number 1 through 33 on my channel for more interesting FoMoCo-related content. Please like, comment, and subscribe. If you enjoy my videos and want to support my efforts, please share the Yours and Old FoMoCo Iron YouTube channel with your old car friends. Thank you. If you have any questions or if you have a suggestion for a future video topic, please feel free to email me at adrian.clements@me.com. Yours in Old FoMoCo Iron, Adrian.